In this how-to video, we'll be going over how to set up a CJWinter ER attachment. First, verify that your CJWinter ER attachment shipped complete. Here we have our CJWinter attachment, CJWinter thread rolls, CJWinter thread rolling attachment manual, and a quick setup guide. For initial setup, all we're going to need is our CJWinter thread rolling attachment. In this case, I'll be using a 191 ER01. Remove the attachment and thread rolls from the packaging. Then, we're going to load our thread rolls. To do this, flip the attachment onto its shank, grab the appropriately sized Allen key, and undo the 3 button head cap screws on the front of the attachment. Once all 3 button head cap screws are loose, remove the attachment's front plate and remove the 3 thread rolls from the tube. The thread rolls must be loaded in clockwise order, either 1, 2, 3, or A, B, C. Starting with roll A, we're going to load the rolls. Now roll B, and then roll C. Before closing the attachment, let's go ahead and verify that it opens in the correct direction. Hold the attachment spring housing and center plate in one hand and the shank in the other. Draw back on the shank to disengage the drive dogs and index the attachment open. As you can see, when opening the attachment, the thread rolls are closing. This means we are going to need to reverse the direction of the eccentric roll pins. To do this, close the attachment, remove the 3 thread rolls, then reinstall the front plate and flip the attachment onto its face, with the shank facing up. Before changing the direction of the eccentrics, it is crucial that all thread rolls are removed from the attachment, as during this and any adjustment of the range of the attachment, the eccentrics can sometimes stroke the rolls into one another. This collision, and the forces involved, can damage CJWinter precision thread rolls and lead to poor part quality in future. Next, we'll adjust the setting. Loosen the fine adjust screws so that they are both fully withdrawn from the arc of the adjustment bolt. Then, break loose all 3 hex bolts and fully remove them and the washer from the attachment. Once complete, flip the attachment over and rotate the center plate until the eccentrics are facing outwards. Ensure that the hole for the setting bolts is aligned within the gap, and then open and close the shank. Make sure that the eccentrics cam inward. Now that we've set the attachment opening direction, we're going to reinstall the thread rolls. Ensure that there is ample clearance between the thread rolls in the open position, as this will be diminished when the attachment closes. Verify that the attachment will close snugly without the rolls striking. Then, reinstall the front plate. Now, we can see that for our given setting range, the attachment's bolt circle no longer lines up with the stroke of the eccentrics. To remedy this, we're going to jump the range of the attachment. To jump the range, we'll lift up the spring housing and shank off the timing gears and center plate. Then, we're going to rotate them until the next gear tooth of the shank lines up with the next gear tooth of the timing gear in the attachment. Now, our hole is back within the adjustment range, and we have travel on both sides. If you were to reinstall the shank and the hole was not visible or partially obscured in the new position, this is unacceptable, and the shank must be rotated again until a new position with adjustment range is found. In our case, this range will do. Now that we have an acceptable range, we'll reinstall the washer and the hex head bolts. Ensure that the bolts remain loose and are only hand tight for this next segment, as we'll be setting the thread's minor diameter. For setting the diameter, you're going to either want a gauge pin or an acceptable blank for your part. which is going to allow full engagement of the thread rolls. Open the rolls as wide as they can for your given range. Then insert the blank into the mouth of the attachment. If the attachment will not close down fully on the blank, leaving it loose in the thread rolls, flip it over and inspect the range. In this range, we can see that the entirety of the adjustment arc is maxed out, leaving us with no more adjustment to fully tighten down on the part. In order to resolve this, we're going to jump the range again, this time with the blank in the thread rolls. Tighten them down securely to set your blank diameter. Then flip the attachment over. Lift up the shaft and spring housing and rotate until a new setting range with adequate adjustment is achieved. Now we have what looks to be a suitable range, with the blank tightly secured in the thread rolls and adequate adjustment on both sides. Now, securely holding both sides of the attachment together in this closed position, reinstall the washer and 3 hex bolts. And with the bolts still loose, we can continue our adjustment. Once centered, we're going to twist the spring housing and shank opposite to the front plate and center plate to tighten down on the blank and ensure that it has good engagement for the full length of the thread. Once secured, we are going to tighten down the 3 hex bolts with the blank or pin still in the attachment. Once all 3 hex bolts are set, we're going to open our attachment by drawing back on the shank to disengage the drive dogs. Then, ensure that the blank can be freely removed and that the thread rolls open and close in the correct direction. Lastly, we're going to tighten down or fine adjust to dial in the attachment setting. With the aid of the attachment setting scale, tighten in the positive side first until contact is made with the hex bolt. Loosen the negative side until you have a good amount of clearance, and then tighten the positive side 1/2 turn. This reduces the blank diameter by approximately 5/10, which is what CJWinter recommends to account for material deformation. Then, once the positive side has been set, tighten the negative side back up to lock the screw in. Then, fully tighten the 3 hex head bolts, and you're all set. At this point, after that half-turn adjustment, your blank should be a little too snug to fully thread past the feed chamfer for the thread rolls, which in this case, it is. For more information, visit us at www.cjwinter.com.